You need to make it simple because it's not.
I might turn the lights on.
You probably didn't check what I sent to you.
I did.
You're not shy at all.
You know what I mean? Because the symphony again is missing.
Yeah.
The Johnson.
Yeah.
I'll look into it.
Because the one you said West, it's South. We always had that one.
Oh.
And the one we need, it's West Midland. West Midland. Mangiando. It's like last month was first time we had. Last month it was the first time we had. So yeah, you did the last thing.
So you think
I'll have to revise it on that. What are we timing you?
You can time me if you want. I just turned the timer off on Keynote because it's really stressing me out. And it was already at 13 minutes, so.
if you want, we can dial that in.
You can time me like privately.
Judging me.
Okay, so are we ready? We're going to start. Kylie, woohoo!
Okay, let me take some tissue.
Well, I'll start anyway.
Yeah, start.
So I'm just going to talk through the Lean Startup in 20 minutes, maybe, but I don't know how long it'll take because I've never tried it before. I wrote a summary of it in my old job because I worked in an agency and it was to give out to clients. And I gave it to Thomas and he really enjoyed it and wanted me to do something with it. So this is what I'm doing. When Tom described the Lean Startup in the poster thing you made, you say it's a book that was our Bible in the early-ish days and a lot of brands called it like a Bible for startups. And there's some really good stuff in it, but it's not perfect. And it's not just for startups, and I'll talk about that a little bit as we go along. Obviously, it goes without saying that if this book told you everything you needed to know, then no startup would ever fail. So it doesn't. But there's lots of interesting ways of thinking that we can take away. So, what is a startup? That was a gift. It turns out none of my gifts are going to work. It's probably there you go. Right. So a startup is any group of people creating a new product under conditions of extreme certainty. That's basically it. I would say that we're under extreme uncertainty. So there are 5 principles of a lean startup. The first one is that entrepreneurs are everywhere. So all an entrepreneur is, according to this book, is anyone who works under conditions of extreme uncertainty. So we're all entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is management. So management needs to work under extreme uncertainty. So we need flexible and learning-oriented management rather than micromanaging. Validated learning is all about testing, proving, and adjusting each part of our vision to grow a sustainable business. Build, measure, learn is something that I don't actually talk about that much here, but it seems to be the biggest principle that people took away from the Lean Startup. And it's just a feedback loop whereby everything we do should be based on what we learned from the thing that we did before. And finally, innovation accounting is about evaluating progress in businesses where your typical business metrics are probably 0. So things like revenue and ROI, if they're 0, how can you measure whether or not you're progressing in the right way? Vision is a section of this book. I don't know why it's called that. So people think management is going to invite bureaucracy and stifle creativity, but the Lean Startup believes that managers are there to harness entrepreneurial opportunity in everyone. So employees are entrepreneurs too, and entrepreneurial management needs to be able to help people find their inner entrepreneur. It's a bit wanky, sorry. So validated learning is not an excuse for failure. You don't just get to say, it didn't work, I learned. It's about finding evidence to prove or disprove your assumptions. So every startup is an experiment. We are definitely an experiment, and still at the moment, 2 years on, we're still an experiment. But in terms of technology, we could build pretty much anything we wanted. That's not just us, like around the world, we can still do pretty much anything. So we need to ask ourselves, should we build this? And we need to ask ourselves, how can we turn this into a sustainable business? So we don't just build things and see what happens, because then we don't know if the change that we've made is good or bad. So we need to create hypotheses, which maybe you did in GCSE science, which is the last time I used hypotheses before I started doing this. But you make predictions about what's supposed to happen, and then you test those hypotheses to see if they're true or false. So when you say, does the product provide value? Well, you might build your hypothesis to say, I think people will pay £5 a month for a service that does X. And then you figure out how you're going to test whether or not people would pay £5 a month for that. So he was going to leap. It was going to be, oh no, he's leaping. Sorry. It's not leaping on my screen. So there's two big challenges when it comes to testing. And the first is having an organization that can handle testing. I think where we are like everybody's eyes are just on the cat. I think we're in a pretty good place for that. We all understand that we need to be making small changes and growing quickly. And hopefully with Dominic, we can have some processes in place to make experimenting something a bit more structured. And the second challenge is performing all of those tests without losing sight of our mission. So the minimum viable product. We want to create the maximum amount of learning with the least possible effort / money. If customers react the way that we expected them to the minimum viable product, then we know we're onto a good thing. So most products do get customers. Even really, really rubbish products get customers, and even people pay for really, really rubbish stuff, and then it doesn't work out. So how do we know if we're doing what we're doing well enough? And this is all about principles of measurement. So I talked a bit about innovation accounting earlier, and there are 3 milestones. So first you need to establish a baseline. That's just your MVP. You create something, you get people using it, and you get some baseline data. This is what people do. Okay, now I know how I can build higher and higher. Then tuning the engine just refers to starting experiments and testing and creating those small changes that just tweak your product to get it into the right place. And then if the metrics start to improve and it looks good, then you're probably going to carry on doing what you're doing. And if you don't, you're going to think about pivoting, which I'll talk about in a bit. So metrics are the things that we measure, the numbers that we want to know. And they need to be actionable. They need to tell us why something happened or what we're going to do about the thing once it's happened. So you can tell me I've got 1,000 page views on the website. Great, I don't know what to do about that. But if you can tell me that the conversion rate of our paid adverts is 5%, then I know that I can build upon that, and I know that I can move certain things around to change that thing. That's an actionable metric that I can do something about. They need to be accessible. We just all need to understand what's going on. There's a tendency to use stupid words when talking about metrics, but really it's just I just said conversion rate of paid adverts. Really, I want to know how many people clicked an advert who went on to pay for a Snap trip. And this is the way that we should be talking about what we want to measure. And finally, it needs to be auditable. So we need to believe the data, and we need to each be able to understand where that data came from so that we can truly believe in it. And just a quick bit on split testing. This is one of the main ways that people test assumptions, is we show a certain percent of people who come to the website one thing, we show another percent of people, or the rest of them, a different thing. And we just see how they behave differently. And then we can figure out, based on which one performed best or which one got customers doing what we wanted them to do, how we want to make changes going forward. And typically A/B testing was something that was thought of as a marketing thing, where you'd go and you change copy. Like I think Amazon split tested all the shades of blue to figure out which color like a link should be. But those changes don't really make any difference. So the lean startup, the whole thing is about testing your product. So it can be a lot more about features, about big product changes rather than just copy and images. So going back to pivoting, everything we've talked about so far is about proving those assumptions that we started with worked. So if they do work, we carry on. And if they don't work, we pivot. And when people talk about pivoting, I think there's a tendency to think that you mean just scrap it all and start again. And it's not that. It's taking what you've already learned so far and trying to think of a different direction you could take it in. So for Snap, if our mission is for anyone to go anywhere for as little money as possible, maybe we figure out that the best way to do that is with hovercrafts. And then we pivot to that. And we're still doing our same mission, we just change how we're doing it. So this bit is just about growing startups quickly. So this is what I find to be a bit of a weird thought experiment. But you imagine that you have your stuffing envelopes. So you can fold all the letters first, then you can put all the letters in the envelopes, and then you can stamp all the envelopes. Or you can fold the letter, put it in the envelope, stamp, move on to the next one. So it seems like the first one is going to be the most efficient way of doing it because you get into a rhythm. And that method is called single piece flow. And it doesn't usually consider how long it's going to take for you to sort the envelopes out, to stack them, to move everything around. And even if it did, what if you folded all the letters and then they don't fit in the envelopes? You have to start again. So the most efficient method is to do something small, incremental, see if it works, then apply it to the rest of the things. So there are 4 ways to grow according to the Lean Startup. They're pretty loose, so you can kind of take it however you want. Word of mouth, obviously, if people like it, they tell other people. As a side effect of product usage, so when you see someone with something, do you want it? You see people with MacBooks, now we all want MacBooks. Paid advertising, obviously, TV, Google, Facebook, however you want to do it, and through buying again. And the Lean Startup says that there are 3 different engines of growth. So just 3 different ways that growth happens. So there's a sticky engine of growth, and that's all about making people come back. So if the rate of new customer acquisition is greater than the amount of people who leave, you're going to grow. Then you've got the viral engine of growth, which is when customers aren't intentionally trying to spread the word about your product, but it just happens automatically as a side effect. So if each customer brings in more than one new customer, it doesn't have to be a whole customer, that can be like 0.2 customers on the scheme of things, the product will grow. And the final is paid. So each customer is worth X amount over their lifetime. So for Snap, say it's £14, you buy 2 tickets over your whole life. If we can acquire a customer for less than £14, we're going to make a profit, we're going to grow. So, but another principle that's quite interesting in the Lean Startup is the 5 whys, which just means if you ask why 5 times, you'll generally get to the root of the problem. So I used the Lean Startup example and then I didn't really like it. So then I thought about us. So if a customer wants a refund, the first thing we do is find out why. They might say, well, the coach was late. Okay, so why was the coach late? Well, the driver got lost. Why did the driver get lost? Driver's app wasn't working. Why wasn't the driver's app working? There was a bug. Why is there a bug? It's something in Jira and we need to go and fix it. Prioritized. It's just a way of, if you're stuck in a problem, just keep asking why and see what happens. It's not particularly innovative. And that's it. That was less than 20 minutes, wasn't it?
Well done.
So yeah, just a few things to take away. Like, you are an entrepreneur. We're all entrepreneurs in this business. You know, we might not be the people who came up with this vision, but we're the people responsible for making it happen. So we can create small changes that make a big difference, and that's pretty exciting. In terms of startup as a word, I mean, we're not a startup, but we're operating under those conditions. So I think it's still interesting to consider ourselves a startup and think about how we...
So why aren't we a startup?
Well, the definitions change for everyone, don't they? Some people say it's when you when you find product market fit is when you're not a startup. Some
Oh,
people say
right.
it's a year.
Oh,
Some
yeah,
people say
sure.
it's the amount of money you've raised.
Mm.
So I know, for example,
I was going to say,
She hasn't seen it.
profit.
yeah, people have so many definitions of it, and then some people would say that we're at scale up
Or
now,
growth
which is
stage.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's just a word that doesn't really mean anything. But we can still think of ourselves as a startup because we're still, we're
There's
always
lots of
going to,
uncertainty.
Cool and growing startup.
yeah, cool and growing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is growing. I want to say. I don't know how you say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can think of our own departments as
Still building.
little.
No,
Right.
let's not use that word anymore, please.
I'm out. We can think of our own departments as little startups as well as if we want to, and ourselves as entrepreneurs within that, as long as we're keeping track of the bigger mission. The lean startup is a set of principles. It's not a set of guidelines. Everyone needs to buy into the certain principles and the ways of thinking to make it work. It doesn't tell you what to do. It just helps you maybe think about how to think about it. There is perhaps an issue between the balance of speed and quality of a product. So when you're making lots and lots of small changes, it's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture. And I think this happens in design quite a lot. When people do lots and lots of split tests and they tweak lots of little features and stuff, and you need to pull back and say, right, we've done things that get our customer through the funnel, but it looks like, it's rubbish. So we need to take a step back, and sometimes we just need to do things that are right or best rather than things that make these changes. And finally, there is a concern that it could be a threat to creativity. So if people are constantly under pressure to validate ideas, to make small changes, to push things, do people take a step back and think about how they can best solve a problem? And I think that's probably a thing in very disruptive companies. There's an inclination to say, oh, that didn't work, so it was wrong, when maybe the problem just needed a bit more creative tackling. That's it.
Excellent. Do we know when was this book written? More or less.
Like less than 10 years ago?
Something like that.
Like mid-noughties, I think. Pre-recession, I think.
That makes sense.
So yeah, the process is like it says at the beginning of the book that it's based on the way Toyota were doing manufacturing, like lean manufacturing. So like most business books, even really, really good business books, there's nothing new there. It's just putting there was a load of jargon in there, right? There's a load of terms like engines of growth, the sticky engine of growth, which isn't how I think about this stuff in my head, but it helps explain it. But it's just a new label for something that we've been doing for years.
What does entrepreneur mean? It says we're all entrepreneurs. What does it mean?
Anybody working in a company operating under extreme uncertainty.
That's an entrepreneur, is it? It's a French word, right?
Entrepreneur.
Does it have direct translation?
Sorry, I
I've read
didn't know
lots
the
of different-
etymology of entrepreneur.
But yeah,
Should be your first line.
Yeah.
I think it's a weird word, and I think it might, give my
Does it-
surprise it.
Does it
Surprise.
Oh, they speak
have to
French
do
here.
with something, dealing with something new that
It
nobody
comes
ever
from
talked
France,
about?
so you're right.
Is it?
Not necessarily,
Depends on
because
your
lots of
head,
things,
that's
like everything's been thought about, basically. Nothing's new. We're all using different ways of doing the same thing. You can be an entrepreneur and you just create the Russian gum tree. Like you just build something that's already a thing.
Can you read it?
Early 19th century, denoting the director of a musical institution. From the French, undertake, entreprendre. Entreprendre.
So maybe we should use the word undertakers.
Musical conjunctor.
Yeah, that sounds nice.
Prendre.
Can we have our own theme
means
song when we get into the
learn.
dog? Yeah, awesome.
Oh, is it
Take,
what's the word?
prendre.
What's the word for learn?
Learn in French.
No, I thought it was that. I was,
Etudier,
Yeah.
something like that. Study.
Start.
Are they calling it papers?
Yeah.
oh, so it's to do with that. Yeah.
So it's all comprehending.
Promoter
Then, is that
is
We're all
the
comprehending.
translation?
But also is a
Right,
promoter
I don't know.
in the entertainment industry because that's probably how it was born the word.
Yeah.
Right, that's different.
So there was the thing there about vision, and I think that's really important when it comes to the startup, which really links back to the OKRs realistically, because objective key results. So the way that OKRs kind of work, and I don't know like the technical definition, but in my head, the way they work is they are a way for the very top of the business to go, this is the direction. So for Thomas to say, my vision is this, and these are the three objectives that we are going to try and do as a company to achieve that vision. And we're going to measure whether we have achieved those objectives by these key results. So exactly what you were talking about having measurable, quantifiable things for your testing hypothesis. It's the same sort of thing. And what it actually is a tool set for a company to provide that level of guidance all the way down through the company, so that Thomas has his 3 goals, and then I'll take away from that some of the things which are very tech focused, and I will create 3 objectives for technology, which must all be something that helps to achieve those objectives. And then I will give those to the development team, and the development team will then pull out 3 objectives for at a lower level. So at the development team, it'll be like, right, we're going to build this product, or we're going to change that form, and so it's all linked up. I mean, I'm sure Dominic might also have another explanation, but the basically what I find the OKRs are, they're like your guiding principles and the thing to cling to when you've lost sight of everything else, and there's so much going on, and you're really questioning, oh my god, right, how, I've got this long list of things, and you can simply just go, will I achieve my objective or one of the other company objectives by doing that task right now? And if the answer is no, then you don't do it. And because we have to be ruthless about feature creep, scope creep, just doing things because we think that would make this thing easier. But it might make that thing easier, but you're spending time not doing something else that would make the company get closer to an objective. So there has to be a certain amount of wisdom from the top of the business, and as those objectives filter through, so that you don't end up doing like I'm doing and going off on a tangent, for example. So yeah, and they are very useful for prioritization, and you'll find that as we start to do more work with Dominic, that the OKRs are going to be the guiding principles for prioritization of work that we do.
The element of everyone being entrepreneurs is also about, yes, you need that guidance from above, and that's what management needs to be able to give it to you in a way that allows you to innovate on your own terms, that gives you autonomy, that allows you to be your inner entrepreneur. I hate myself right now.
Like one of our values. It's one of the snap values.
Yeah. So exactly what you're saying. But
yes, we don't tell you what to do. We tell you what your objective is, and then you have to work out the best way to achieve it.
Yeah.
And then demonstrate how you will prove that you have achieved it.
Yes.
And that's the key principle.
So what are our OKRs for business right now?
Have a look on the hub. That's an overview, isn't it? They're not specific on that.
Yeah. Oh, I had to drink these out.
One specific one for this month, which is really key.
£1 million annualized.
Right.
I think
That's it.
by the end of October or November. October.
November. What do we have to do?
We've done it.
We need to turn over equivalent of £1 million, but we should cut by a month.
I thought we already did
Yeah.
that.
We did last
We
Friday.
did last Friday.
Yeah.
No, for a month.
Oh, we've done it for.
Do it for 1 day.
So we
It's not easy, but,
Yeah.
Oh,
And then I think another one was 30,000 journeys. That number seems to ring a bell. Anybody remember? 30,000 journeys in a month, I think.
So what have we done over the last month that goes towards that £1 million?
Everything was
Beer
done.
matting.
So beer matting is one.
Oh
Pressure
yeah,
first.
pressure first.
Okay, pressure first. So how do we know that those two things help with that £1 million?
Because we can Friday. Because they're measuring. They're measuring the.
How do
We
you
don't
know that
with
beer
pressure
actually got a
first.
sale?
They're all
beer
That's
matting.
hard.
Yeah. So
because both of those are first trip free,
With the
so they weren't
Oh,
about
yeah.
to revenue in that month.
Yeah.
That's right.
you spend a certain amount of money to get the beer mats done, so that should cost. Then so now we're saying that we did this and we saw an uplift. We can map that back to the beer mats.
Ish.
Kind of via the first trip free code.
Yeah.
or-
So then the next question is that is your customer really your customer if they get the first trip for free?
No, our customer is somebody who pays,
Right.
which is what we
Exactly.
need to be focused
But
on.
they more people get know each other, and this will help us with group booking.
Yeah.
Because group bookings is just money. They don't use the code.
So the question for me would be, or the way I would start to think about it if I was working on that would be, it's the second trip that we get back. Can we link the second trip of that user back to those beer mats to prove that we've actually made money off the back of spending the money on the beer mats? So every time we develop a feature or think about something, we have to think about that. So a good example that came up today was somebody mentioned we should do PayPal. I hate PayPal. It's not mine to dictate what the customer should have. So the first test that we're really going to run will probably be this kind of idea of a backdoor test, where we say we support PayPal, but we don't really. We'll just take the customer to a 404 page where we can measure those clicks. And we know how much it will cost to put PayPal in. And then we can measure if we get these amount of clicks, that will make money off the back of this, and that's what we'll do.
It'll be interesting to see how much money that costs us in customer support queries.
Yeah, how long do you run it for? Quite a minimal amount of time, I presume. 'cause you-
Yeah. I mean, you can always just say on a click page, you can always have a custom that just says, "Oh, we're actually building this feature."
Yeah, exactly. Let's put that.
Coming soon.
Prevent.
No, here's the mobile.
Unfortunately, our design team are ahead of our tech team on the implementation front, so they've added the button, but
Yeah.
nothing else.
Sorry for any inconvenience.
So can we tie those back? That all exists, doesn't it? Like
No,
first
not
trip
really.
free
This
creates
is
an
why-
account.
This is why we need a CRM.
Exactly. But you can check
Oh, the
all
data
the.
exists then,
yeah.
doesn't it?
I mean, mostly for things like the first trip free and the beer mats. I mean, the best way to track it is through having a code, because for that sort of mass thing, so you have beer mat is your code, and like we all have our referral codes, which is our names pretty much. So on the business cards you've got that, and then you can track. Oh, right, okay, 6 people signed up because they used the word mine, and then I can pat myself on the back and go, "That's great, my job is done."
But only if they travelled again, because
But-
otherwise you just got a free trip.
Yeah, so I think we do track in the system the use of the codes, and we can tie that to a customer.
Yes.
I would hate to be the person producing the report for that, because I think it will be quite convoluted. But we do have the data, and we can
That's
join
the
the
room.
dots eventually.
It's not hard to do.
Okay,
No.
without using a spreadsheet. CSV.
Yeah. We can.
Excellent.
So easy.
Yeah, and then other things like you share like Kylie will send an email out and it'll have campaign tracking parameters on it, so we can track the instant usage of those, who clicked them and what they did. But what we don't have the ability to do is to work out when somebody books a trip after they've had the first trip free, did they click the link from the email campaign? And so there's a way to do it, but it involves a little bit of tech where we stash that data against the user when they sign up, and then we can represent it later on to say, actually, yeah, that email resulted in that booking.
Yeah.
With the freshers, so the code fresher, that's what we use, isn't it, on the beer mats? And that was only introduced a few weeks ago. So don't we look at every booking that was made with fresher and whether they booked again? Is that what you're saying, Alistair? Is that
And if you want to be really invasive, you can look at where they booked from. There's a lot of universities.
Yeah, they are different.
Like beer mat.
Yeah, no, where they booked from this university. So analytics, you can see where someone's browsing from.
Yeah.
So that's something we could do.
Yeah, because they are different. We have different promo codes. First trip from.
But one of the things is this is why the data dashboards, so the TV, and maybe another one that we might get up as well, is really important, because those are the key metrics that we're measuring for like those OKRs are things that we would want to be able to actually have in real time. So that everybody can see on a daily basis how we're doing and where we are, and it just helps to focus on them.
Going back to metrics needing to be accessible, they need to make sense. We need to be able to look at those and understand what they mean, not just it be a wall of data that we're all just can't be bothered to work out.
In terms of things like sort of transparency, how does everybody feel about those sorts of metrics? How much do you think you get to see, and how much do you think you would like to see? Is there a consensus that you want to see more, and you feel like you're not seeing more, or a consensus?
Yes, I want to see more.
And okay.
Can you give some examples?
I feel like we get told everything in passing, but we don't really ever have access to the data ourselves. So that's maybe more of a thing for me, but I can kind of track my campaigns through whatever little means I try to make, but then I'm a bit stuck because the data's stuck behind a wall.
Even if you think we want to check a customer who can't use the promo code, we have to ask the tech team to access the data, because we don't know which number the person registered with. We just see the latest number. So if I have to check why the code didn't work, I have to go to the tech team, ask, can you please tell me, the code, who used this code? I want to know number of users is 10, but who are these 10 people? How can I track them? If, these little things that is still data stuff that we don't have access to, but will help us. And I guess each team will have their own things.
Can I just ask, who is aware of there's a folder in Google Drive called Results, which is where Josh and I store our data, which then gets put onto the dashboard and the TV. How many of you are aware of that or have access to it?
I'm aware that it exists and have access, but it's a lot of spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So I don't really know.
It's not the nicest format. Is it?
But it's there.
It is there, yeah.
So does anybody have any idea, for example, how many users we have in the system?
Was like 30,000?
40.
No,
40. It's around there.
Well, it depends how you define users.
You're in the right ballpark. and then how many active and how many active users?
Yeah, we don't know this.
So I mean, all these sorts of things, like we should be. They're the sort of things to have on our chart as well. How many people are on the website right now?
What's the daily take? The Stripe dashboard.
How many payments failed? How many payments failed?
Yeah.
I did try to put the Stripe dashboard on there actually, and it's not really easy.
But Tom, can't you use the hub as the dashboard in an event? Try and get people to use the hub more for other reasons. Maybe we could pull data into that for people to refer to every day.
Possibly,
Number of users. Or
that might make sense.
Yeah. That might make sense. So we have 39 people on the website right now. This has to go up on our dashboard in real time. Last night at about midnight, we had 57 people on the website. So all those people staying up late was quite surprising. And when we were in Birmingham, we had 157 people consistently on the site while we were in doing the exec meeting.
And what's the Stripe payments to date?
Yeah.
Stripe payments today? I don't know.
Because you can get the Stripe
Group booking. We received the group booking payment today, by the way. One
That's
leg
good.
of the journey.
How much is that for?
300.
Okay,
Oh,
yeah.
Was it
No,
300? Huh?
It's interesting because Tom was saying that the key number was 2,700 quid is the annualised 1 million.
Yes, the daily.
So the amount of times we hit that, so like that Stripe dashboard is the best one for me. Well, it's the most accessible because you can watch that number and go, yes, it's a good day. Oh, it's a failed day.
Right.
So we need to
it's not making use of Stripe,
isn't it? It's always a bit weak at this time of the week, though, isn't it?
it varies so much.
Well, it does.
Yeah. I think people tend to only get quite emotional sometimes when there's like ups and downs.
Who gets emotional?
I wouldn't.
Someone's crying with that.
That's gonna be recorded though. No, I just remember there was one day we had a really bad day and everyone was asking for answers, and then the next day was the best day. So,
nobody wanted any answers anymore.
Mercurial.
We need to do some work on that dashboard. And maybe we need to catch up with you and Josh.
Well, they've just launched Google Studio, haven't they?
Oh, Data Studio. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
I just literally was like, what is that? And I was like, oh, yeah, actually. And I think it does everything that Clipfolio does. So you can integrate with, but it'll also just give you a lot of the live integration to the website stuff. And yeah, so it might be.
That sounds good. The critical thing for me is that there's only about 3 numbers on each page of the dashboard. Anyway, I mean, if you just put it down 3 numbers, then brilliant. Yeah. Just 3 metrics to say good. Yeah, that's right. It's great. Yeah.
Can I just ask Kylie something? I just want to think it's very inspiring and informative for me because I never worked for a startup and I didn't know what it was all about. I still don't know. It's changing every day. But what would you suggest, like for being a personal, like a personal role? Like each one has a role, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
How much or where should we expand or extend our creativity or our, whatever
As
we have?
individuals?
Yes.
God, if I knew the answer to that, I'd be a millionaire. I think we just could perhaps we all just need to feel in a way accountable for what we do. Like, being in a startup, it's always somebody else's business, unless you're Thomas or a director. But like we play an important role in that. And if we can sort of feel like it's our responsibility to actually change things rather than to just come in and do our work and go. And that can be on the bigger level where if you have ideas for the company as a whole, you should talk about whether it's internally or externally, or if it's just in your team, or if you want to try something.
I think it's a one-on-one conversation with your line manager if there's anything you want to get involved in, and also I guess better socialization of the stats that we've been talking about, and also knowing what the goals are so that you can think about it.
See, I think one of the things that I always loved at startups, I've been lucky enough to work my way up through companies and career through startups, was always feeling like I didn't really have to follow a procedure to do anything. You felt empowered to be able to carve your own path. So if you had an idea and you thought, why are we in this? I was thinking about this last night. You know who in the business deals with those sorts of things. You should go and talk to them. You know what I mean? I don't think there's no stupid questions in a startup as far as I'm concerned. It's one of those.
Seems so busy, and like I never want to disturb anyone with anything. It's like everybody's like has so much to do with on daily
I'd
basis.
rather say I don't have time now than you're not asking.
Yeah, exactly.
It's way better.
Or you just drop them a Slack or something.
Yeah, Slack's really good for that.
Yeah.
It's about autonomy and permission to do stuff, and you should feel empowered. That's one of the values, right? Isn't it? Like, what would you say? You said it earlier. We don't tell you how to do something. We just tell you what needs to be done, and then you can figure out what. So it's taking that autonomy and being sensible with it.
But obviously, talking to each other is a big part of that. We have to feel like we're able to, and we need to feel like there are times when we're all going to say, I'm too busy and be a bit short because we're in the middle of something. And we just need to make sure that we're having good relationships in spite of that, because it is going to happen. We are going to annoy each other a bit sometimes, I think.
But you know, one of the reasons why OKRs come back straight into this is because, you know, they give you a filter already. You know, you can sit there and go, you know, it's an idea, but it doesn't actually contribute to any of those goals. So maybe I should just, you know, write it down somewhere and send it in an email. But if you think it's something that really does contribute, you know, you can say, well, actually, maybe they haven't thought about it, and
Maybe it's
you know,
another OKI, the additional one.
Well, you wouldn't add more OKRs, but you know, every quarter. So OKRs, you set like an annual goal, and then every quarter you set quarterly goals. And then obviously, depending on how those quarterly goals go, may influence your next quarter's goals. You know, if something works and it's successful, then you can kind of go, right, okay, that one now becomes a standard business process and we're going to do something different. Or if it doesn't work, you may have to keep that goal and find a different set of, you know, other implementations to achieve the goal.
Cool. Are you from a corporate background?
No, not at all.
Because I'm just thinking here is very different in that if you do have an idea, you don't have to go via your manager to get that idea out there like you would, in my experience, in a corporate. You go to your manager. You could just go directly to anyone. Yeah.
Cool. I think we should wrap it there. Thank you very much, Charlie.
Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
Woof.
Now I feel heavy. Tom told me I should add jokes, but I told him I wasn't funny either, so.
Where's your light?
Yes, yeah, I need to send out some information to you.
Apparently, I managed some coaches this way. All the coaches probably did.
Yeah.
I just changed the price to a the price varies. It's 25 seats.
Okay, fine.
So I didn't get a chance of sending over the new things. So asking you to do a price check. Or,
Yeah, sorry.
or forecast.